Yo, what is up, guys? I am Josh, and this is #Life Choices.
I am Anath. This is the podcast where we aim to help you make the best life choices.
I am David, here to welcome you to Situational Saturdays.
Lastly, I am Lem, and this is our weekly segment where we talk about different situations we face in life.
We take both real and hypothetical situations from you guys and ask each other, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And this podcast is brought to you by no one, because we have no sponsors. But if you guys want to help what we're doing here, helping people make the best life choices, feel free to send us an email. That's lifechoicesph@gmail.com, and maybe we could promote your product, your service, or whatever. We would really appreciate that. So at this point in time, I would like to pass the mic on to Anath to tell us what our situational for this Saturday is.
Okay, so I want to thank a friend who sent this in. He wants to remain anonymous.
But it's a he.
Okay, that's 50%.
Yeah.
So the situation this friend is in is his parents do not allow him to date, but he is getting close to a girl and he has feelings for her, and these feelings are developing each day. And so he is in this stage where he doesn't know what to do. Does he obey his parents, or does he trust his heart and what he feels?
Okay, yeah, before we
this
start
is a job for Dr. Job.
Hey, no. But before we delve into this topic, I want to ask you guys, what was your upbringing? Like, did your parents allow you to date? Maybe share a bit of a background and maybe the reason why they didn't allow you to date, just to get the ball rolling. How about you, David?
Okay,
Did your parents restrict you or
my
not?
parents did not really restrict me on this, no. But there was this group of people who went to our school and taught us about true love waits. So ever since then, I would reserve myself for just, my
That
first
person.
girl will be my last girl forever. So I have to approach it with wisdom and really assess my situation right now. Am I ready to have a partner
Okay.
in life?
How about you, Lam? So what was your upbringing?
The only restriction was that I would have to have graduated already before.
From what, high school?
From college.
From college.
Before I could date.
Yeah. And did your mom tell you the reason why you had to be restricted in that sense?
Oh, no, not explicitly. She just keeps saying it. I just mindlessly say, okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and that wasn't a problem for you.
That wasn't a problem
Oh,
for me.
that's good. How about you, Aina?
Okay, for me, prior to getting into my first relationships, I never had that sort of conversation with my parents. But before getting into the relationship, I did talk to them, and they were cool with it. The one reoccurring piece of advice is, do not get carried away, be careful. And it's a piece of advice I got from my mom just today too.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very relevant and timely. And as for me, my parents, same restriction as Lam. They told me that I couldn't get into a relationship before I graduated college. And basically the main reason is it gets in the way of studying. So that's what they always tell me. So, okay, we've gotten that question out of the way. What do you think this guy should do? He has these feelings, getting close to this person, but can't date. What are ways that he can address it?
Okay, I'll take the first leap of faith.
Okay, go
Which
ahead.
is a reference to our
Movie Mondays.
last Monday. So you should check that out. We talked about Spider-Man. Okay, so dude, you have to check if you are ready for the responsibilities of a relationship. So we're talking about emotional, we're talking about financial, which is another reference to last Thursday. discussion.
Everything is connected, man. Everything's
too many.
connected.
And I'm not doing this on purpose. Okay, so you have to check if you have the time for it, because it's gonna consume your resources, man. It's gonna consume everything. So if everything is in check and there's no restrictions, and I think it's also important to know and to have your parents' support in this. And if they're cool with it,
Yeah, but in the situation though, his parents don't allow him. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so-
but I think I want to bounce off his idea of asking questions to himself if he's ready, because I had this conversation with Lem one time about when you're talking to someone who has feelings, ask them, why do you have those feelings? Because more often than not, especially at a young age, it's superficial things. It's things like, she's cute. She hugged me a while ago or something like that. Those
She looked into my eyes.
Five
fall in
seconds of
love.
eye
5 seconds of
contact.
eye contact. That's 2 seconds more than normal.
That means a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So those kinds of things, like when you ask someone that and you're like, hey, why is it that you have these feelings? And they start assessing, they're like, Right. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. And I think it's a good thing to ask yourself, dude, if you're thinking about like breaking your parents' rules here, just dial it down and think why you have these feelings, because more often than not you might actually talk yourself out of it, because if it's not really substantial or meaningful, then maybe it's not worth pursuing.
Yeah, and so just to backtrack, my friend here, his parents were clear that they do not want him dating. And so the best thing to be doing in this case is really to obey your parents. We don't encourage you to go behind their
Yes.
back and date, but you need to understand that your parents, they have rules. You may not agree with those rules, but they have it because they have your best interest at heart, right? And many times I have seen it where I don't agree with my parents because I think that I know better. But in the end, I realized that really they had a better plan for me, and I need to learn to trust that. So if you're in this situation and your parents are saying no, you need to be able to obey it because they are doing it because they've got your best interest at
Yeah.
heart.
I just like to throw it out there that at times it may not be well informed what the best interest for you may be. I had a friend who was not allowed to date until he passed 50. And it's like, I asked him, is this serious? And they were dead serious. And I'm like, hold on. Okay, so maybe there's something here. Maybe there's some trauma that leads them to believe that, or some they're coming from somewhere basically, that these rules should be followed to the letter that may be unfounded. So I'd say there should be an exercise of understanding. Of course, once you're mature enough, you're not fueled by those emotions of rebellion, I assume, to understand why the rules were set in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think some discernment comes in. You don't want to just question everything they say. Try to it's an exercise of understanding what is the intent behind this rule.
Yeah.
Because maybe if it is indeed for your well-being, or you see the wisdom there, you'll be more compelled to actually, hey, you know what?
It makes sense.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
And just to add to that, start talking to your parents because you may not know why they say these things to you. Have a conversation, and you never know, they may alter their rules for you.
Yeah, that's
you know?
actually what I was going to talk about, because I know of someone who is restricted in that sense, but then she talked to her parents, explained why, and also explained that they could avoid the things that the parents were worried about. And because of that, she was allowed to date. And so you don't have to go behind your parents' back. You can find ways to be able to accommodate your
To
desire
negotiate.
with that person, and negotiate with your parents as well. It's not strict in that sense, but at the end of the day, if your parents don't let you, you should really honor that.
yeah.
And I would actually share my personal experience in that, because I wasn't allowed to date, but if you guys know me personally, in college I did date someone, and sure, it was good, like I was able to address my feelings, I was able to pursue that person, but as a person, I think of myself as a romantic, being able to show these, I guess, gestures of love towards someone. And because I was restricted and I was hiding from my parents all the time, I wasn't able to do those things. So I guess that's one of the things you can think about. You won't be able to get your ideal vision of a pursuit of one person if you're doing that. And at the end of it, I could really see the consequence of my action, having disobeyed my parents. That relationship ended up very sour. It became toxic at some point, and it didn't make me happy. At first, sure, I was able to address those hormones of wanting to be with someone, but in the long run, when I was thinking about should I be with this person, it became really toxic. And that's because the foundation wasn't good. It was founded on going behind my parents. And maybe you have a different story of going behind your parents, but to this person asking the question, I would really discourage it, because it's so difficult always having something to hide. When I would text, I would always text at a 45-degree angle so that my parents don't see my phone. And that kind of freedom, that kind of anxiety of always, oh no, I might get caught. Made you feel like a drug dealer of some sort, that I was like, oh no, like I was hiding something. So that feeling is not good at all. And sure, you may be getting good feelings while you're with your hidden girlfriend, but you don't get that, I guess, happiness outside of it, because there's always this guilt and this anxiety of having to hide it. And in the end, I wasn't really able to, I guess, feel good from that. So if your goal is to address those feelings of feeling good, it won't last. It will just be for a while, and then it will be replaced by guilt. And I will tell you, after I graduated from college, I have been allowed to pursue someone or basically be in a relationship, and having that freedom is so much better. I could just tell my parents, hey, I'm gonna go and meet this person, and that wouldn't be so difficult. And if ever I wanted to do some grand gesture, like say for example we go on a road trip somewhere, like a day trip, and go back, I don't have to hide that from my parents because I'm already allowed. So you can do those things even. And as somebody who considers himself a romantic, that was something that, oh dang it, I couldn't do that because I was hiding from my parents, but now I can. So just a word of caution, and maybe use my story as a warning before you think about going behind your parents' back.
Yeah, and I think Josh brought up a very good point about foundation. If the relationship isn't brought up on the right foundation, it will crash. And I can relate to that very well because in my first relationship, the foundations weren't right, and it ended up ending in a very bad way. It was toxic. Things are good now, but that was what happened because the foundations weren't right. And I also want to sort of transition and ask you guys this question. So my friend, his parents are clear, okay? No dating allowed. What are practical ways he can deal with the feelings so that he doesn't disobey his parents?
Now, tip number 1, spend time in groups. If you have those feelings and you really want to spend time with that person, try to spend time in groups, and don't make your sole attention that person. Try to really get to know everyone, because having that exercise of just not being alone will be able to build up that strength so that you can be able to distance yourself from that person from a feeling standpoint. And that will really help you in addressing your desire to be with this person, because you can still be with that person and not have it really trigger all these emotions because you two are alone.
Yeah.
Tip number 2, learn to wait. Wait for it. You know, there was this experiment about marshmallows and kids. If they waited long enough, they will have 2 marshmallows instead of 1. So
Hey, that doesn't apply to relationships. No.
You can't have 2.
You can't have 2 girlfriends.
Okay,
Let's
that
not
is
go there.
exactly not what I meant.
No, I get what you mean though. It's more fulfilling when you learn how to wait.
Okay, so guys, don't interpret it that way.
Don't get 2 girlfriends, guys. Not a nope.
That
Nope.
is not what this podcast is for.
Yeah, so basically what he's saying is learn to wait. The practical tip there is look towards the future. If the foundation of your relationship is based on hiding, it won't be as fulfilling. But if you learn to wait, you get 2 marshmallows. 1 marshmallow is your girlfriend. The other marshmallow is a fulfilling relationship, not 2 girlfriends. Okay? Just saying that, just pointing that out. Yeah. So
Okay, another thing that should be done is before the feelings really start escalating is set boundaries.
Okay,
Boundaries
that's very
that you
important.
will not cross no matter what.
And be accountable to people.
And be accountable. So if you're in the situation where your parents do not allow you to date and you have feelings for someone, write it down. Write down what you will do and what you will not do so that you do not disobey your parents and do not let these boundaries change. Because what happens is as feelings grow, as you become closer to this person, there is the chance of you doing more things that would result in you disobeying your parents becomes much higher because your feelings start controlling your actions. And so I was talking to my friend who is another friend who is in a similar situation, but his reasons are not his parents, but more of a spiritual conviction. So for him, we were talking about it and he said, this is what I will not do. So you know, you don't always have to distance yourself from this person. You can have feelings. Feelings are a normal thing. And these feelings growing is also a normal thing. But when you've already drawn the line and said, okay, I will not cross this line no matter what, then you're in a good place because you will remain behind the line. It's okay to dance behind the line or walk away from the line. But I believe that as long as you don't cross the line, as long as you stay true to what you initially set, then you will be in a good place.
Yeah, and I want to point 2 things about that. And first is addressing what he said, you need to have a line. Draw the line that you won't cross. Because like we talked about a few podcasts before, is you might come to a point where it's the tipping point. It's an accumulation of small actions that you have done to kind of feed your feelings. And there comes a time where you can't resist but disobey your parents. But if you don't want to do that, then you have to draw a line and you don't tiptoe a little over it. You need to know and you need to be consistent that this is the line I've drawn. I will not cross it. And accountability really helps. But the second thing that Einath said, and this is a practical tip as well, which is basically admit to your feelings tell yourself that it's there. If you're in denial, it makes it harder to address it. You know that saying that people say that you can't go to a doctor if you don't admit that you're sick. That's the same thing here. If you don't admit that you have feelings, you can't address it. These tips won't matter if you don't admit that the feelings are there. But I'm not saying admit it to the person. Find somebody to, no, I'm not saying that. Because if you do, it's a slippery slope from there. But find a person who you can talk to about it and say, hey, I have feelings for this person. And be able to admit that is one way of telling yourself, I know it's a problem and I want to address it. So admit to those feelings to someone else and then deal with it afterwards.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize what Josh said. Do not admit the feelings to the
person,
girl.
yes.
Because when you've set boundaries and you've said, this is what I'm not going to do, and then you go ahead and tell this girl that you like her, what will happen next is exactly what Josh said. It's a slippery slope. But also what happens is the desire to actually change these boundaries and disobey your parents becomes greater because that girl may have feelings that are reciprocated, And so we strongly advise you, if you're in that situation, confessing is not the best option because it just leads to more complications and will lead you to compromise on things you believe in.
Yeah, and that is really what we're trying to say. It's a slippery slope. It goes downhill from there. If you open up and if this person ends up liking you, then oh no, you're gonna start going behind your parents' back, and that is not something we'd recommend you do. It's very dangerous and it's very difficult once you get into that.
Yeah. And if you're a person with a strong desire for a relationship and you're not allowed to, you need to admit that you have feelings for this girl. You need to admit that you have a desire for a relationship, but then you need to start channeling those emotions into something else. Because what happens is when the desire becomes so strong and you're bottling it up, it's going to explode. You are going to cross the line that you drew for yourself.
Yeah, and I guess one more tip before I wrap things up. Know your priorities, because if you know your priorities, you can guide your actions as well. If you're in school and you know your priority is to graduate, then you could already set aside or weed out all those things that you know you shouldn't be doing. And so when there comes a point in your life where your priority is finding someone to spend the rest of your life with, then you can make that decision to be with someone and start pursuing those feelings. But if you know your priority is something else, try not to think about it as much. So at this point in time, I'm going to wrap things up. Basically, we talked about 5 main things so that we could be able to prevent that development of a relationship when you know you can't because your parents don't allow you. So first is ask yourself, are you ready? You consider your time, you consider your finances, and you also ask yourself, hey, why do I have these feelings? Because maybe that will discourage you from further pursuing it. Second is that we are firmly recommending you obey your parents. I had my experience, and my experience sucked at least towards the end, and I felt all the regret because I hid it from my parents. And there's a lot of things that you're not able to do because you're hiding it from your parents. You can't be as romantic as you want to be. You can't do all these gestures because you're hiding from your parents. And then when you're not with your hidden girlfriend, you'll feel all the guilt. Third is have the right foundation. So having the right foundations is really being able to go to your parents about it, because if you're really thinking long term, when you marry a person, you don't just marry the person, you marry the family. So you would want to involve your family in all that decision. That includes yours and hers at the same time. Now, fourth is you need to wait. Like David said, there was this experiment wherein kids were taught to wait, and if they waited, they will get 2 marshmallows. But if they got it right now, then they will only get 1. This doesn't mean you'll have 2 girlfriends. No, but it will be a more fulfilling relationship. You'll have your girlfriend that you wanted, but you'll also have a fulfilling relationship with that person. And fifth is set boundaries. You need to be able to write these things down, maybe even have a contract with a friend to keep you accountable. But you need to set these boundaries so you know whether you've crossed something or not. So once again, guys, that is our Situational Saturdays. And thank you for listening to the #Life Choices podcast. If you want to have your situation featured in the show, you could email us at lifechoicesph@gmail.com. That's also the same email that you can reach us at if you want to sponsor our podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, just check out lifechoicesph@gmail.com, and we hope to have you guys back here on Monday for Movie Mondays. But before you go, we just want to remind you, in this life, we have no choice but to make choices. So choose wisely. See you in the next podcast.